Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Tuesday is People's Poll Day. It's one of the shows that hasn't changed through lockdown and isn't changing through lockdown. Today is People's Poll Day, James. What did we put out in the poll and what did people vote for?
Well, we obviously put the poll out before we got the news of FPL officially reopening with unlimited transfers. The idea was to do a bit of a deeper dive into the actual chips that are currently available. It didn't necessarily have to mean specific to forthcoming game weeks or even the rest of this season. So put out free hit, bench boost, triple captain. It's worth saying that even before the announcement, the free hit chip was absolutely pissing the vote and still did. So I don't know if that's in relation to, I guess there probably is a correlation to what people have got left and when they want to use it and what best solutions are is part why it won. I think there's a lot of people in hindsight were like, oh, I wish I'd hit the bench boost button. I want to know if there's alternatives to that. But I wanted to attack it more in terms of one of the really interesting things about the free hit, and I think it's the first thing to say about this, is it can be used as an aggressive or a defensive move in terms of FPL strategy. Whereas all the other chips, be it a wild card, a bench boost, triple captain, essentially they're aggressive plays. The free hit, depending on your strategy, can be used as a very defensive move. So, for example, covering up in a blank game week, for example, is even an argument in terms of coming up to this game week 30 if people decide, and I think there's a undercurrent of noise about it, particularly in the FPL community, of ignoring the whole unlimited transfers and now using the free hit. We should probably clarify for those that listened to the podcast yesterday that we didn't have the clarity on what the situation would be on the free hit when we recorded. So it looked like from the original statement that you could do unlimited transfers and then free hit. But in hindsight, it's very clear in the rules that if you use a free hit, you revert back to whatever your transfers in the bank were prior to the game week. And essentially, we are now in game week 30. So you would revert, if you were to make transfers now and then free hit, you would revert to what your team was at the end of game week 38, the end of obviously the weird one, previous season. I'm not using all this 30 plus nonsense and all that. So as far as I'm concerned, you would go back to whatever your team was when the game shut down. So it's an interesting one. Do you think, Suj, when you normally play it, do you like to use it as an aggressive move or as a defensive move? Because obviously you can attack sort of a particular game week of fixtures or particular doubles. The other thing is obviously to cover off the blanks is what a lot of people will use it as well. So
it's always historically been used in blank game weeks for me. Around like the quarterfinals of the FA Cup kind of time is normally when it comes out, where we've had between only 4 and 6 matches, let's say. So for me, it's always been a defensive move for two reasons. One is obviously, it really helps cover off the blanks. And the second is that regardless of, in an ideal scenario, when you're playing your free hit, you'll want 22 fixtures. So you're going to pick from teams that all have a double game week in that week. You'll have 11 on the pitch and you'll be able to get 22 fixtures out of them. With the way the pricing of players works, you're not going to be able to pick the 11 best players from these teams. You're going to have to end up with some £4.5 million defenders potentially, or a couple of cheapo midfielders at 5 or 6 million. So you end up with maybe 5 or 6 players that you really want and another 5 or so that are the best that you can afford, as opposed to potentially the best that you want. So it's for me is basically like 1.5 game weeks as opposed to being like 2 game weeks worth of value in that chip.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I tend to try and be aggressive with it, but then in doing so, if we're building up to a blank and a double period, I tend to try and run through the blank game week rather than use the chip there, because I feel using the chip there when you've got 4 fixtures and 8 teams, for example, it's a defensive move. Obviously, you've got your best pick of the teams in that given game week, but you tend to go with the guys that are going to be very highly owned anyway, your kind of your Manes, your Trents, for example. So it becomes a very defensive move rather than aggressive. And I always feel that the upside of it generally is to do it in a double game week if possible. Although there's certain game weeks, we've had it in the past, haven't we, where we've had sort of double blank double. And then you almost feel like you're forced into using it in the blank.
Yep.
Then that's less of a defensive move because you can go aggressive then because you know not everybody else is going towards that same set of players. When you got that first blank, normally around what you said, the FA Cup quarterfinals, it feels like everybody's heading in that same direction of the 8 teams that are playing or whomever. And that's why, to me, it always feels a defensive move. And I generally feel I can get the advantage somewhere else. But obviously the pitfall of that is you end up just getting blindsided by just completely aiming for these 8 teams or so. I think it's always dependent in terms of who are the teams, right? This year it was looking like Liverpool and Wolves, for example, and with the fixture runs that they both had, it was more than viable to go and really attack those teams particularly.
This year, I think a lot of people were on the same strategy, whereas a couple of years back, it might have been a little bit more diverse. A lot were working towards building their squad up for this blank. And Liverpool and Wolves gave us 6 decent options, plus add a sprinkling in of Burnley and a couple of other players. And you were all right this year without having to use your free hit in that blank. And everybody else was pretty much working towards that same strategy as well. Now that it's all been thrown up in the air, I think there'll be a bit more of a divergence on the free hit strategy.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. As I said, there's plenty of people now thinking about using this in game week 30, which I really don't hate as an idea, particularly those who've already used the second wild card. I actually think it makes sense. You kind of feel like you're losing a chip by not taking advantage of the unlimited, but you can fall into that trap, can't you, of the 4 teams? And then do you want to be stuck with those 4 teams? If you go for the very best from those 4 teams, then you are going to lose out somewhere in terms of having some crap on your bench. I think for those who are going to bench boost in the game week, you're going to be drawn into keeping hold of the players who have got singles who you've got high value in. So, for example, I think Trent is going to be in a lot of bench boost teams. You might find people like Jimenez or Bruno Fernandes are going to hang around in these teams because people have built up good value in them. Mm-hmm. And from that perspective, it really does kind of make sense to hold on to these guys that you've got the value in rather than selling for the 1 week and then wanting to go straight back to. Looking further ahead, one of the things I'm going to do...
What's your views on that? Just out of interest.
What do you mean?
On punting value, I saw a tweet from one of our friends and followers, Heskibo, saying that he's happy to take a 0.4 loss on Trent or sell him now and buy him back for 0.4 a week later. And 0.4 for me felt a little bit rich. 0.2, I could probably stomach if I was getting the player back. If I was not getting them back, then you know what, you just take it on the chin. But 0.4 to sell Trent to buy him back felt too much money to be burning. And this year, I mean, do you know your squad value and money in the bank off the top of your head?
Oh, I'd have to have a look. It wouldn't take me a second to have a look.
I'm at 102.4 squad value and 1.1 in the bank. So 102.5. It's probably the lowest I've had in squad value.
That is low.
At this point that I can remember.
Just generally, that's quite low, mate. I'd have to have a look for mine. Wouldn't take me a sec. Yeah, that's low. I've seen certain people hanging around. Look at FPL Connect earlier on Twitter. He's got like 107 million or something in squad value. There's be plenty of others got that sort of thing as well.
I peaked at 103.6 this season, and previous years I've always been over 105, 106 type thing. So I feel like it is low. I haven't lost any value since the shutdown, since the original game week 30. I was at 102.5 then, and I'm 102.5 now.
I'm 104.2. Should I bench boost and lose quite a few of the guys I'm 0.1 up on? I'm probably going to be down to about 103.4. But my selling value will not be affected that much. The only one that really affects me by selling is actually probably Danny Ings.
Yep.
And maybe one other. I think I've got a sort of 0.2 up on Jota and maybe one more. So my selling value won't be too harmed, and that's important to understand the difference between team value and actual selling value. So the selling value is more important really in terms of what you're planning to do in future. in the case of our friend Tom Heskebo, if that's what he wants to do, that's fine. I don't disagree. That feels like too much of a drop-off to me. And I would say Trent, at his value, etc., is one of the best players that you could have if you're having a single game week player that's going to be part of your bench boost. I mean, that's, for me, that's an automatic 100%. Yeah, if I go down that bench boost route, it will definitely be part of that bench boost. And I just need to decide on the others. And I think I will fall into certainly Jimenez because of value. I don't mind the fixture. He's another one. Even if I wild card afterwards, I kind of want to carry with him that little bit of value I've got. As I said, I think other people will be in a similar position, say with Bruno Fernandes. Interesting to see the way people play it out. And the other thing that I think will draw people towards potentially ignoring the unlimited and playing the free hit in game week 30. If you're already set up at one point, is obviously if you're set up and you like what you'd land on in game week 31, I wouldn't discourage it to anybody. And the other thing is looking further ahead. I've had a look through this morning. There isn't an obvious week where you'd think, oh, I'm going to be in trouble that week. I mean, that's how it looks for me. For other people, it might look different. But there's not an obvious one where I'd look at it and go, oh, that's a terrible fixture. Do you know what I mean? Like Wolves are playing Liverpool, Wolves are playing Man City, for example. If I hold on to those assets, where I'm thinking, I don't really want that with them playing each other. Doesn't feel like there's anything like that as such. Obviously, City play Liverpool in game week 32. That might be the obvious one to just scrap those guys off. And you've got sort of like United playing Brighton, Arsenal playing Norwich, Chelsea playing West Ham, and go and attack those sort of teams. But there isn't an obvious one. And obviously, if you go without City Liverpool on a free hit, you're still taking a chance, even though they're playing each other, right? These guys, anytime, any place. What's
your views on a second double game week happening? Do you think it's likely?
Extremely unlikely. I think the only thing,
because of the free midweeks that we have after the FA Cup weekend.
Well, you've got the game week 32 is going to be drawn out over like 6 days or so, isn't it?
Yeah.
So whereas we've got game weeks sort of Wednesday to Monday and then Tuesday to Thursday and then Friday to whatever, that third week is like Saturday to Thursday, isn't it? So it's a long game week. And that's to catch up from FA Cup teams will play that game week 32 weekend and then playing in the midweek afterwards. And the fixtures are really spread out. Also allows people a little bit of a break. As far as I can see as well, exactly the same thing happens at the end as well. I think it's game week 37. Could be 36. I might have that wrong. But again, right at the end, there's a full gap where you can catch up on the fixtures. I'm pretty sure it's game week 37. The only thing I can see causing postponements is coronavirus.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's going to cause a position where we end up with a team having to play, I don't know, twice in 3 days or something like that. Can't see it getting to that stage otherwise. So for those, I've seen a few people see Mona where like European football's not going to restart till August.
Yep.
There's no way that UEFA haven't decided that officially, but UEFA are not going to dive into the Premier League calendar and stuff like that now. But I think the Premier League would tell them to piss off.
Yeah.
They need to, UEFA's the one because of the travel of Europe, etc., and different conditions in different countries that needs to wait the longest. So, for example, in France, it's obviously on shutdown. So PSG and Lyon are still in the Champions League. And PSG have definitely got a home tie to play, haven't they? Obviously, in the quarterfinals, they're already through. I think Lyon have played Juventus at home. But obviously, if they went through, they'd be in the same condition. And at the moment, they're apparently not allowed to play in France till September. Now, will there be any leeway on that if it's sort of August? France is it's across the water, right? So you would think by then they're probably in a position to be having behind closed doors football in France, whereas probably now France wouldn't be able to have it, for example. So UEFA competition is going to be after the Premier League. There's nothing else. League Cup's finished. It's done. There's nothing else that can cause blanks or doubles other than the virus, basically.
Yeah. Normally with the bench boost, you would want a wild card as close to the bench boost as you can to set your team up to give you 30 potential fixtures. Now, the more we talk about it, I'm just thinking, if I don't use my bench boost, this is part of my decision-making process, and maybe it will help other people to think about it in a similar way. If I don't use my bench boost in this game week 30 plus, then when am I going to use my bench boost? Which would mean that I wouldn't use my wild card. Like I don't need to use my wild card, so I'd be able to unlimited transfers, but then probably they're useless because I'm going to free hit. So I'm coming back to my original squad. So then I'm looking further down. When am I going to bench boost? And if I do, and you're right, James, that there's no more doubles, I will get at best 15 fixtures out of my bench boost. I'll have the added advantage of my wild card right before my bench boost, but I'll get 15 fixtures compared to a potential 27 that we can get in game week 30 plus. On the flip side, if I don't use my free hit now, when will I be able to use my free hit potentially? I'm going to sneeze. Sorry.
Hey!
There we go. I'm sure there's a drinking game involved with that. So just sneezed. Drink. If I don't use my free hit, when am I going to use my free hit later?
Yes. I wouldn't have a clue right now. I wouldn't have a clue.
No, but there might be a situation where there's a handful of players that are on fire, who are real form players that I don't have in my squad. Harry Kane right now, for example, fills me with a little bit of fear, not owning him and not planning on owning him in the next 2 or 3 game weeks as well. We talked about the fixture swing for West Ham. They've got after the 33, maybe a couple of those. The free hit allows me in 3 or 4 weeks to dive in on a handful of players that have great fixtures that I didn't have enough information about right now. So just playing the numbers game, bench boost now gives me 12 extra potential fixtures versus 11 on a free hit. So the number of extra fixtures you can potentially gain is only 1. But I don't know if I will have a situation where I want to use my bench boost again, whereas I definitely think I'll be in a position to be able to use my free hit later.
I think those who were originally looking to free hit in the original game week 31, I think that's still an option. Mm-hmm. Use the unlimited transfers for 30. Free hit for 31, perhaps if you didn't have your complements of, say, Liverpool, Wolves, and actually Spurs now with Kane's son against West Ham is more attractive than it would have been 3 months ago, for example. Mm-hmm. There's others as well. Leicester playing Brighton, for example. Arsenal playing Southampton. Cheap-wise, you could look at, say, Norwich against Everton, for example. You could look at both clubs there. So that might be an idea to go unlimited, free hit, and then you've got information of 2 games, and then wildcard 32. The only problem with wildcard 32, I think, is you're then walking straight into wildcarding into Manchester City and Liverpool. But it might be something you're happy to put up with for a week to negotiate the early issues. That goes a little bit back to sort of Adam Hopcroft's idea of I want the information first. Now, if you can negotiate almost 2 lots of free hits to get you to 32, then you've got 2 full game weeks of each team to assess where they're at. Are they out of relegation trouble? Are they actually going to challenge for top 4 or not? Some of these, I mean, if Spurs or Arsenal lose twice, for example, the season's completely finished. You may not want to look at them at all. So you could gain some information. To go back to your bench boost point, one of the interesting things is, let's just say hypothetically, let's say you wildcard in game week 34. You work it as a nice kind of split. And then you might want to target teams like Norwich, for example, who played Watford in 34, and then yourselves, West Ham in 35. Yourselves as well, you play Burnley in 34, then Norwich in 35. Watford have Norwich and Newcastle. So you could kind of target in that sort of period, for example. Target these guys, and they'll make part of a nice little bench boost the week after. Mm-hmm. One of the issues that I would have with that is, isn't it better to try and get in a position where we've got shit players who we wouldn't really buy otherwise? Let's take Tyrone Mings or Target at Villa as examples. Isn't it better to have them as part of a bench boost when they've got 2 games rather than 1? And the obvious benefit and upside of going down that route of the bench boost is, yeah, Mings 2 games. We spoke about this yesterday. Would you pick a Mings with 2 games over a Lascelles with 1 game? Yeah, you take the chance on the 2 games, for example. The upside of it is, now if you do it now, you can hold the value that you've got, and your bench of single game week players, if you go for 11 or 12 with doubles, for example, is going to look very strong. If you do it now, you can have a bench of, like I've said, TAA, Jimenez, Fernandez, plus a double game week goalkeeper. he's a lot stronger than going in with saying, I'm going to have a bench made of I don't know, Cantwell, Decore, for example.
Charlie
and,
Taylor, Lascelles,
Charlie
all of
Taylor
these guys.
in one single game week fixture. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, of course.
And so therefore it's the upside of the bench boost, because a lot of us are obviously in game week 30 are going to end up with a very, very similar team, because the two main strategies at the moment are unlimited, then wildcard, or free hit, and then back to your original squad. So game week 30 for a lot of people is going to look very, very similar. Everybody who's playing strategy-wise is going to have Aubameyang, for example, I would think, even though it's City and he's one of the games in the double. Everyone's going to have KDB. Everyone's going to have like at least 2 Sheffield United defensive. So it's just going to be a case game week 30 is staying with the pack. The advantage is the bench boost of those with the possible single, I think. And so actually, I think it's still quite an aggressive play to go without the free hit in 30. But I completely understand why so many people, particularly those who've been able to set up for their free transfers during lockdown, are looking in a position now going, I really like what I've got. And actually, I don't dislike what I've got landed on people like Bruno Fernandes and Martial, and then knowing on the other side of the Tottenham game, which I think currently is very unpredictable with Spurs having their players back fit, and also United with Rashford and Pogba back fit. It's really unpredictable. I'd be happy to have those United guys on the other side. I wouldn't be too bothered about going without, say, the Liverpool guys against Everton, and knowing I'd then have them straight back for Crystal Palace. So I completely see the upside of why many people will ignore unlimited free hit in 30. When you then get the benefit, however, of the future bench boost, I haven't got a good answer at the moment. There's nothing obvious for me to say, yeah, this will be great for you, unless you take on a whole different strategy to normal, which some might do under this circumstance, which is to say, I'm going to sacrifice an extra premium and balance my squad with perhaps substitutes who are more in sort of the 5.5 million range. Defensively, obviously, you can have a cheaper, but rather than saying having a 4.5 million, you might want to have 5 midfielders and 3 forwards that are all above 5.5 million, for example. Yep. Now, that probably means sacrificing an extra premium. But if you can cover the captaincy off 2 players, then again, I think you can go down that route. For me, I've just got to take advantage of that bench boost in game week 30. I'm almost certain that's what I've decided.
There's going to be a tipping point for a lot of people around bench boost and free hit right now. From a pure numbers point of view, if you bench boost, like that, one of the things James talked about here is the dilemma of if you're happy with your squad, what do you do? Or how much of your squad are you happy with? And that's the situation I'm personally in with Charlie Taylor, Trent, Doherty, Traore, Jimenez, Vardy, Kevin De Bruyne, Salah. There's at least 7 or 8 players that I'm already happy with. Now, if I went in to the bench boost with 8 double game week players and 7 single game week players, that gives me 23 fixtures. Whereas if I went in with a free hit and came back to my squad that I have, it's 22 fixtures. So at the point that I have 8 or fewer double game week players, because I want to hold on to 7 of my squad, I won't be bench boosting and I'll probably move to free hit. If it's 9 or more, then the differential between the free hit and the bench boost in terms of fixtures becomes 3 extra fixtures. I might then consider moving on to bench boost. So I'm very torn in that. When I look at Vardy and Jimenez and Traore and Doherty and Trent and Charlie Taylor and even Kevin De Bruyne, and then add in Salah and Robertson, I could keep all of these guys and make a happy FPL team out of it. Danny Ings is getting a bit of, I think a lot of people are moving him on, but I mean, we had him.
First 3 are still decent. Norwich, Arsenal, Watford.
Right? 15 goals this season my man's picked up, which is not bad going. He's been ticking away fairly consistently. So yeah, it's a difficult one here on what to do.
Importantly for Ings, by the way, is Nathan Redmond's back fit. I think there was a little bit of a correlation just before lockdown that Redmond's injury had a negative impact on Ings's output. That's a little off subject, but yeah, you can carry these guys if you want. I mean, Ings is one for me. He's 7.1 now. I think I bought at 6.6. So I'm losing awkward value on him, but I think that's one that I'd accept.
I bought him quite late. I only bought him at 7, so I'm not losing a lot of value on him. But
even easier to sell.
I mean, what's he picked up? TV total points is 140 points for the season so far. It's a good tally.
Of course it is. For a guy who's meant to be made of glass.
Did you see the picture that Southampton tweeted of him the other day?
Yes, our friend Matt clean sheet wipeout.
Come on. It looked like he'd just been out on the lash and woken up behind the bins and just kind of.
Yeah, Matt tagged it. It was a picture of James Ward-Prowse with like a snood over his nose. It didn't come off well. I mean, Danny Ings looked absolutely terrible. He looked like he'd been in bed for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he won't bang it up come this time next week, right? And as I said, their first 3 fixtures when they come back to all right. I think it's important to define current strategy. No right or wrong here.
Yeah.
Absolutely no right or wrong. It's going to be absolutely dependent on your circumstance. It's almost very difficult at the moment getting questions in terms of what do you think of my team, etc. What moves would you make? Because you need to be thinking about the moves beyond game week 30. That's the best advice I can give you. If you decide to go on the unlimited now on bench boost, what is your escape plan in game week 31? Or are you happy to go with what you've got and take a chance on it and give yourself an extra week and then maybe start coming off when Liverpool and Manchester City play each other, for example, in game week 32? Until you've worked that bit out, I don't think you can really decide. And in terms of getting the best out of a bench boost in further, there isn't. I mean, apologies to spam people with Champ Man FPL, but we had a circumstance in that game that we had a game week in game week 15 a couple of weeks ago where it was clear that game week was the best game week for every chip, bar probably the triple captain. It was the best game week for a free hit, and it was also the best game week for a bench boost because of the makeups of the teams. And actually, I think we've landed on the same thing here with game week 30. It's the best week to free hit, and it's the best week to bench boost, and you can't do both.
No, exactly.
So it's going to be whatever's you decide to do. For reference, for those who are not aware, that double game week, and admittedly this is based on a computer game from 19 years ago, was a complete washout. It was abysmal, and so could this be in real FPL as well. So dependent on what you want to do with future strategy and where you think you can get the best out of it. I would look at it more and go, if I bench boost, great. That's where I think the maximum possibility to gain the aggressive play on the game week rather than defending against everybody else. And I don't see where I can attack the bench boost in the same way in the future. Now, to flip that and say with the free hit, agreed, best to use the free hit now as well. Where will I use it in the future? I don't know yet, but there will be something, be it a defensive or an aggressive play, where I can certainly still use it and gain advantage.
Correct.
Whereas I'm not sure that works in a bench boost. You know me, my opinion on bench boost is that you want to get 16 points out of it. And the reason I always use that total is if you've got 4 subs with 2 fixtures and they all score you 2 points in each, that's your 16 points. Could I get, let's say hypothetically, 2 games of Leno, TAA away to Everton, Jimenez away to West Ham, and if for the benefit of, I think what the majority will be, Bruno Fernandes away to Spurs, does that sound like 16 points to you? Because I tell you what it does to me.
Could comfortably be.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, could comfortably be. 2 returns there and you're on 12 already. A clean sheet for Trent and a goal or an assist for Himi or Fernandes, and you're already there basically.
Well, I think if Leno could keep a clean sheet against Brighton and he'll have the odd save point against Man City, you would think he'll cover more than half of that.
Exactly.
That's where I would think on that. And then all you need to get above that 16-point level is a Jimenez goal or a TAA clean sheet, for example. And you've hit that total. And still in your main team, you've got the benefit of the chances of Mings twice, etc.
Yep. There we go. I was worried that this podcast would end up not offering any clarity to our listeners, but I think we've done all right, James, in deciphering what your options are. And for those that have listened and are still a little bit confused, just repeat and listen again. There you go. And it will become clearer over the next few days. We still got over a week until the deadline, so you're not under pressure to make your decision yet. If you're like me, for example, and still haven't made your decision on what you're going to be doing, I may even bench boost with only 10 double game week players rather than 12. For
That's
example,
also okay.
Yeah,
because we've just kind of highlighted there's some really good single game week players who you might not want to do without. I mean, Vardy's maybe another one who people have carried the value through. He'll be in a lot of dead teams at the moment, but I know he's still in yours, for example. So you've got a real decision to make with Jamie Vardy, for example, against Watford.
Correct.
I'd possibly be tempted to keep.
Mm-hmm.
You could even make a case and say, all right, Vardy's playing Watford, or Aubameyang's playing Brighton and Man City. Is there a lot in it? Again, I would take that view and say it's the possible ceiling of Aubameyang that he can score in both games. But then Vardy could get 2 or 3 against Watford, right? So
difficult, James. Difficult.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing how this pans out over the next couple of weeks. So, guys, just to keep you posted on what we do have coming this week for you in terms of content. Tomorrow, Sky FF is back after a massive hiatus. Sky Fantasy Football is obviously opening. There's no free transfers
looking
been
forward
added
to
into that
tomorrow.
So, we'll be unpacking and deciphering all of the single game days and all of that kind of stuff where your good captaincy coverage can potentially come from. On Thursday, we have Clash of the Correspondents, our weekly show with 2 of our correspondents. And this week we have Johnny Pringle, our Manchester City correspondent, and Adam Pritchard at 35, who are our Arsenal correspondent before their fixture next week, Wednesday. And then on Friday, James will be live streaming with Ask James, as well as a live stream for Champ Man on Wednesday and on Saturday. I covered it off, didn't I?
Very good. Well done, sir.
If you want even more content, then head over to patreon.com/planetfpl. We released our first Patreon-only podcast yesterday. We're also doing a Patreon-only Q&A today, as well as a very active Slack community that just keeps growing and growing and growing. That's really good at the moment. So a lot of interaction and chat on there as well as the opportunity to join a Champman Prize League and other different offers and promotions and stuff that we have for all the patrons. So you can head over there for that. Other than that, anything else to add, James?
Yeah, very good, Suj. That's quite surprisingly brilliant. I think next couple of days would be great. I'm really looking. I've not done any planning for Sky. As soon as I've edited and posted today, I'm getting into spreadsheets and really looking at Sky. Looking forward to that, finding what I kind of find on my analysis and stuff, and we'll discuss tomorrow. And Thursday's going to be really important with Johnny and Adam talking about Man City and Arsenal. Massive for the listeners ahead of next week in terms of who they think their best assets will be. I think Adam particularly will have some surprise names for Arsenal assets and will sway some people.
There we go. So guys, if you're James Alapran, go and worry, because James just said that he's getting into spreadsheets, which means whoever you are, whether you're Ben Crellin or James Alapran, James Linden is now getting into spreadsheets. So on that note, guys, stay safe. Ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everybody. Cue music, man, child.